Now our second speaker is Lord Maurice Glasman. Thank you, my Lord, for being with us and your priceless and endless help to Kurdish community and Kurdish issues. Many thanks.
I'll stand up because it used to be the way in Labour conferences that you stood up and no one could hear what you say anyway. So first of all, wonderful to meet you last night, and I will speak a little at the end about how we can continue this work together. But I'll just say, and also my gratitude is always to the Kurdish people, because the relationships and the friendships over these years have basically kept me straight and stopped the drift to the centre, if you like. It's an endless renewal of the radicalism and the friendships over the years. Elif, it's wonderful to see you always. We live very near each other in North London. I do want to honour, because he hates it, Ibrahim, who can't stand being praised, who can't stand being singled out, so I will do it relentlessly. And just for your friendship and all the work, and to Karwan, and for all the hospitality that you have given me and the company. I'm just going to develop what you've said. This is vital. Ocalan's thought is the most important and original thought at the moment in the left internationally. He has given a renewal of a democratic ideal. The relationship with Murray Bookchin, the use of the Murray Bookchin, the rejection of Marxist-Leninism and the rejection of nation-statism in order to conceptualise an idea of society is vital. I'm just going to concentrate really and the historical work. So following Ocalan, unlike you, I do believe in miracles. I see miracles all the time. Unbelievable human resistance against the face. At home, I've got 4 children, in order to teach them what this is about, I've got 2 photos up, 2 pictures up in my living room. The first is of Ocalan, so that they can daily begin to understand. The second is of Imam Hussein, because Imam Hussein made his stand at Karbala against Yazid. And I always, when they've got their arguments, I always say, are you being Yazid, or are you being Hussein? And they understand that completely. And we know that the face of Yazid in our time is the face of Erdogan in Turkey. That this face of oppression, this face of remorseless and relentless exploitation and oppression of people. So there is a connection, I think, between Hussein and Ocalan in terms of the power of people to resist domination. This is the foundation, I think, of the theory that he developed. So I just want to develop 3 distinctive parts of Ocalan's thought. I do want to say, Ertugrul, is that the right pronunciation of your name? Okay. I did it with 2 O's. I was hoping I was going to get it right. That we're going to do in Parliament, in the Lords, hopefully in the new year, a day on Ocalan's thought in Parliament, and I would love you to participate in the planning of that and the development of that. The point is, we've got the Labour movement, the old saying, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. What is vital is to say that we are in need of learning Ocalan's thought, of understanding what that's about, because that way we can renew democracy, a social democracy, against the domination of the state and the domination of the market. And what's happened in socialist thought is that we kind of hate the market, we kind of love the state. That's where it's gone, and that is the next move from now, is to move towards genuine solidarity and action between people locally. So that's the first thing, is to say what is distinctive about democratic confederalism. And democratic confederalism is based on this idea that the basic unit of power should be as local as it can possibly be. So the way I've translated that, it's a bit weird into the English in particular, but generally British tradition, is that the most local unit of power is the parish. The most local unit of association is the parish. And that was in many ways a church idea. The church had a parish, and that was a local unit of association. Just to let you know about miracles, after 400 years of relentless statist modernisation, more than 90% of English people still say they're from their parish. Where are you from? They don't say I'm from Hackney, they say I'm from Stoke Newington, I'm from Dawston, I'm from Shoreditch. That goes throughout the country. People identify themselves as from a human-sized local area. And this is the great importance. And the second component is this idea of democratic self-government. So just to say, the parish was not always associated with democratic self-government. So I've put those two ideas together into the parish commune, this idea that we should develop now a system of parish communes. This is one way, that we can think of democratic renewal. Now we've got the space to do so. Let's not get involved in that discussion. But now when we've got this new space of imagining what a democracy is, this idea of the parish commune, and what Ocalan says is only two rules with the parish commune, which is an assembly, which is a direct assembly. So we've got the privatised town halls, we've got the closed down churches, they can be renewed as local assemblies, and those local assemblies vote. There's only two rules that Ocalan has specified as to this parish commune or local commune. The first is there has to be a minimum of 40% women in attendance, and that's an absolutely vital component. And the second is when they elect the chairs, there has to be a woman and a man. So I will get to that in a moment, but that's it. And after that, and when we went to together with Roy to Rojava, we went to that place. It was a fantastic moment because the two local chairs, the man and the woman, one of our delegation said, "Can you write down your phone number?" And the guy just said, "I told you I wasn't very good at school. I can't read, I can't write." He said, "But for some reason, the local people elected me." Now, we can learn a huge amount. Real leaders are not people who did PPE degrees at Oxford. And we've forgotten about this, that these were real leaders. What did they deal with? Housing. They dealt with education. They dealt with local situations of young people who were, let's say, in difficulties. But there was an incredible democratic self-government going on within this local communal system. And if you look at modernity and modernisation, it's a relentless centralisation of power in the state and the market. So in the market we have oligarchs, and in the state we have just central administrative authority. And it voids society of relationships and common action for various reasons. Now at these what I would call parish communes in Java, there were women in headscarves, there were women in jeans, there were men in full traditional gear. Nobody was denying their identity and their background. This was a space within which Christians, Sunni Arabs, Kurds, Turkmen could find a way of living together and negotiating the peace. So the first thing is that this idea of democratic federalism is also central to a renewal of social democracy, because it gives a fundamental priority to the social, to society, rather than the state and the market. And it is democratic. So this is in a way, the most important point, we here in Labour in Britain have everything to learn about democracy from what the Kurds are doing. So it's very important. The second is this idea, which has been developed in Ocalan's work, of the way the patriarchy asserted itself in a tradition, a Mesopotamian tradition, that was historically actually women had an extremely powerful role in that culture. So Samara and his work on Samara and the temple and the three levels, of naked kings and all of that is extremely important. And it doesn't mean that men and women are identical. This is a very important part of the work. It's not a denial. But when he looks at the move from agricultural to hunting, when he looks at the use of violence when he looks at the way that monotheism was used as a means of imposing patriarchy, there's a huge amount that we can learn and accept from this. So the second key component is the active leadership of women as women in the theory, and I think that that's extremely important. I want to then very briefly also look at the space this opens up for what I would call civic diplomacy, or a different kind of foreign policy. And to say that as part of this justice for Kurdistan, Ibrahim, sorry to add to the burdens, but we have to be thinking about how to integrate our relationship with Kurds and the Kurdish communities into a general approach to foreign policy that supports anti-fascism, democracy, autonomy. This is the space that it opens up, because it's not only the relationship between the states. He gives a very big priority to the solidarities and internationalism. You know, I'm here at this conference arguing a lot with people about an issue that I won't really delve into, Brexit, and I'm always saying that there's a massive difference between internationalism and globalisation. That globalisation is a system of financial domination, and internationalism is actually preserving diversity, which is the Bookchin concept. And so it's vital that over the next 2 to 3 years we develop a foreign policy position within Labour which integrates the Kurdish question into a wider question of who we are and who our allies are. So that's an extremely important part. So as you can see, I was on a panel yesterday and someone said of themselves that they were the most boring man in the world, and I disputed it, because I am, particularly on this issue, so I could go on much longer. But what I want to say is that this idea of democratic confederalism, the idea of building the solidarities and the leadership of the poor within the framework of society, is Labour. This is what Labour did when confronted with the might of commodification and enclosures and capitalism in the 1830s and 40s, which displaced our people from their homes. And then that was allied with the monstrosity of the poor law state. So the poor were dispossessed, exiled, and the way that we retrieved a home in the world was through the institutions of labour, by the burial societies, the co-op burial societies, by the mutual insurance, by the building societies, by the unions, by the labour movement being of the people, by the people, for the people. Over time, and it's a long story, essentially we surrendered to the administrative technocrats in the state and said, oh, the state will do all that for us, the state will care for us. But under Thatcherism, I think we learned that that's not the case. So what Ocalan gives us is an incredible space to develop a social democracy as the fundamental basis of our country, and I want to thank everyone in the PKK, in the HDP, in Rojava, for developing this very beautiful theory. And I just want to go back to Hussein and Ocalan. You know, the Shia have got this idea, and it's an incredible idea. This is why I'm not going to say your name just in case I don't pronounce it, so I'll say it in the North London way. Otagourou, this incredible idea of occultation. So the 12th Imam went into occultation. He wasn't of the world, and yet he was in the world. He's alive, but not alive. When I think of Ocalan, I think of one man in a cell on an island in the Marmara Sea, surrounded by 200 guards. This is 1,000 guards. An individual completely silenced. No one has seen him now for 2 or 3 years, and yet in his silence and in his isolation and in his terrible oppression, his ideas just grow. His ideas just grow and grow, and this is what's driving our contemporary Yazid, Erdogan, completely nuts. However much he tries to kill it, the ideas just grow. When I went to Rojava, Ocalan was alive. You know, he was alive everywhere. I said, there's too many posters here. You know, put up a poster of someone else. But the thing is that he is in a state of occultation, and every day I remember him. I'm not religious, but I kind of pray for him, you know, that he'd be well, that he'd be living, that one day we can invite him to England and he can give us a proper lecture on democratic and federalism and how to do it. So I just say that in many ways the memory of Ocalan, the idea of Ocalan is also a sacred idea, that it's an idea that you can resist oppression by people together can resist oppression without resorting to nationalism, without resorting to ugliness, but to do it and to just honour the miracle that we all should honour. Is that I remember, and I was with Karwan and we were in Kirkuk when Daesh, when ISIS were really, and they were besieging Kobani. And we all thought that everybody was going to be killed, that this would be eastern Syria and the Kurds would be killed. But they resisted and they won. And as you say, a system, a fascist, Islamicist system based on rape. You know, that's a great line from Ocalan. You know, what is Islamism? It's an Arab war machine based on rape. That's early on in capitalism, in the book on capitalism. And they resisted that rape, and then the women who were enslaved and put in cages and were raped hunted down their rapists, and they killed them, and they beat them. So when you say miracles, these are miracles of our time to be wonderment and behold. When I talk about occultation, I talk about the power that Ocalan has in his silence and his powerlessness to inspire us. And so I just want to give honour to the Kurdish people everywhere for their resistance to the domination of statist oppression, and I want to particularly remember every day Ocalan and how he gives us here in the labour movement in Britain the ideological space to reimagine a democratic society. So thank you.